Hey guys, welcome to the definitive ranking of The Legend of Zelda. Not the whole series, just the game.
Just The Legend of
The
Zelda.
original Legend of Zelda on the NES. So this one,
Zelda 1.
I feel like a lot has changed with this game in the last 2-3 years with you.
Definitely, yeah. Well, because I had to learn it. I had to learn how to actually play it
Okay.
for a marathon or two. I've played it multiple times now. And so it actually required some actually learning the game, whereas before I just would play it and kind of hug a walkthrough.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't play it. I played it once, maybe in 2010.
Okay.
Hugged a walkthrough.
That was your first playthrough of the game in
Not-
2010?
Not my first completion.
Okay.
As a kid, this is the first Zelda game I ever played.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like 3 years old or something, so I had no
Okay.
idea what I was doing. It's just wandering around and dying, and then go play Mario because you actually could figure that game out as a kid.
Okay.
So I played this a ton, and then there was collector's edition, and just again goofed around with it, and was like, okay. And then finally on that same collector's edition, when I was my early 20s, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually beat this game.
Yeah.
But I still didn't fully appreciate it because I wasn't playing it.
I have a vivid memory of being at your hanging out with
my
you
old
in
house.
October of 2010 and playing it on the GameCube on a
big
gigantic
projector.
projection TV.
Yeah.
I think we beat the game too.
Well, yeah, and I was like, wow, you can beat it in it felt like a half hour or something.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't that quick, but I crossed a barrier where I learned how to play it well, and then that opened up this whole new level of I can play it and explore it and like uncover these new things that I wouldn't before when I'm just like following the path to beat it, So I have like this whole new level of like appreciation for the game.
Okay. Well, let's get into the deets here.
Yeah.
Let's start with the world of The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, we weren't
weird one for me. I'll
Okay.
start with this one because I love the overworld. The aspect of it doesn't tell you where to go, but
Yeah.
naturally playing the game, I think there's a good chance a player will find level 1 on
Yeah.
his own. Or if he ventures east, he might get to level 2 at some point. If he ventures west, he might get to level 3. But I like that open world nature of this game.
I have a distinct memory of like encountering level 3. I
Okay.
think before anything else.
Okay.
Being like, whoa, level 3.
Well, that's the speedrun strat, so
Wow.
you're ahead
I
of the
was
game.
way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Well, it just from the start of the game, other than you get like that little bit of paragraph before, but when you actually start the game, I love that opening is so iconic now.
Okay.
You just start on the screen and there's a cave and you can go in it.
And it's dangerous to go alone.
Yeah, the iconic line, and you get a sword. Like I love that you're not even like directed to go where you need, because you can't progress really. You can beat the game without the sword, right?
You can't beat the game, but you can get the Ganon.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. But for most people, you're just not going anywhere without the sword. But I love that you're just kind of dropped in, and who's not going to check out that cave first?
Right,
But
yeah.
You could
Right.
you could not.
Yeah. That would be a bad experience.
It would, but I love that and that's kind of how the whole world is.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're saying, like you can find these first 3 dungeons, and then there's like even more that you can kind of either explore or unlock, and there's all these little details that I never really appreciated before.
Right.
Like when I talked about hugging a walkthrough before, when you read a walkthrough to get through the Lost Hills,
Okay.
which is a portion of the game where you just keep walking up and the screen stays the same and you just have to keep going. When you just read the walkthrough, it just says, go there and keep going up. But then when you're playing the game, like in level 4, I think it is, there's someone who's like, you walk into the waterfall.
Yeah.
And then you walk into the waterfall and, the woman's like, at the Lost Hills, go up, 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 and you get the, it's like you get all these little details and clues that you just don't have before. So I think there's a lot of good here in the world.
Okay.
Why'd you go low on it?
So this is more of a comparative thing.
Okay, yeah.
It is and this is with a lot of the categories here, and this was very hard for me to rank this game overall.
Okay.
Because am I ranking this like it's 2020 or if it's 1987? That's like I kept coming back and forth with that a little bit.
Okay.
Like, this world is like, I think about the characters in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's old man, there's old woman, there's merchant.
Okay.
And there's some moblins.
No, there's moblins. There's a hungry Goria.
Yeah. 5 characters maybe. Impa's in the manual. Like, it's ambiguous whether she's the old woman. In later Zelda games, you have that character interaction that you fall in love with a lot of the characters. And not that old man is great. You know how I feel about old men.
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
Okay.
It's not the same. And I don't think I could have put it over some of the worlds that I think are just more engaging. But I love the overworld. The overworld itself is good, but the world of characters, it's not that lively.
I actually think in that regard, I love it in that aspect too. Like, I love when you're talking, when you're saying, do I base it on current standards or old standards? Like, I love the game because it makes me like feel that era. Like, there's something about it that I love. Like, I wasn't around for it, but it's like I play it and like read the manual or look at the artwork from that time, and I love that world of that game, or you look at I know this is almost like not part of the game, but like all the like types of like weird merchandise that came out at that point to kind of like fill in some of that stuff. Like, you had the board game and you have the cartoon and all that stuff. And I love that era and like that aesthetic. So I think, and that'll also tie into like art style and music.
Well, that goes right into the art right now, and we both gave it high remarks.
Oh wow, I love that. 5 for you.
I give it 5. Yeah, I think it might be the best art style in the whole series. And I've said this so much. I can't get enough of the artwork from the manual.
Yeah,
and the tips and tactics guide.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And the amount of detail that this has been lost in every game actually post this, where they had art for every single enemy in the game, all the bosses, all the characters. And not only that, this is outside of the realm of the canon, but like this is more like that era. I've got like a whole shelf full of these old Legend of Zelda guides that came out, and every guide had its own artwork for these characters and enemies, and it was like it seemed a lot more emphasis on like official artwork back then, more so than now, and there was all the different scenes, and I love that character link, and it's some of the cutest artwork.
Cute. Even on top of that, if we're not even talking about that, like the in-game art style, I think is like iconic and classic. Like, that's the reason why you'll see the 8-bit Link and stuff like still come back. You get like the amiibo of it and all this stuff. Like, I think that's like of some of the NES era stuff, like that and Super Mario Brothers. Like, that stuff still stands out, and you can make, like, my friend has a T-shirt that is just literally all the enemies from The Legend of Zelda slapped onto it with their names under it. Yeah. And it's like, that's a T-shirt design. Yeah. Because it looks cool. It looks so cool. Like, all the, and just what they could do with such limitations, I think is, it's awesome. So that's another tie-in to, like, are we talking about modern standards or like classic standards? I think it's iconic and classic. So yeah, I went pretty high on that. It's not my favorite, but I went high.
Yeah. We touched on the story very briefly earlier. I compared this a lot with Adventure of Link, because it's got the same concept where there is an intro, like if you let the title screen play out, they give you a few sentences of poor grammar storytelling,
because they had to fit it all in there. Yeah.
And then that's it. If you wanted more of a story, you had to read the game manual, which there wasn't like that crazy amount of stuff for this particular game. There was nothing bad about it, but it's just not much, and it's not. I don't think you play this game. The story is not.
Well, I mean, I like it. I only gave it a 3, but like, I love the supplemental stuff, like the manual and stuff like that. I mean, I know it doesn't make sense. You're saying like the art is lost. I feel like I do now appreciate the manual too. I feel like that's kind of a cool like form of artistic expression as well. And I'm not saying like bring it back, but that is kind of a cool like snapshot of that time. And I love reading the manuals of the first like 3 Zelda games where they have some of that backstory and stuff, and some of the artwork that goes with that, like scenes and stuff like that. I mean, I'll take that over like a 20-minute cutscene or whatever. So.
Right. Yeah.
So I like the story. I mean, it's just like kind of a, classic fantasy. Like you're the chosen one, collect the power shards and beat the bad guy, save the princess. But yeah, I think it's good. It doesn't get in your way. It's straightforward. Yeah.
Most people probably. I wonder. I imagine most people who played The Legend of Zelda have never looked at the manual, and I don't think that affects the game at all. Like, it's not like nobody plays The Legend of Zelda like, oh, it's a great game. I just didn't like the story.
Though I will say that I don't know really where maybe in Dungeons we could put this, but I actually think reading the manual will enhance this game. The manual of the game encourages you and shows you how to map out dungeons, which I think if you're actually playing with, this is jumping ahead too much, but like if you're playing this game and thinking of the dungeons the way like they're picturing it, of like actually paying attention to where you're going and stuff, it's way more fun. I actually have a lot more fun playing the game like with this extra material. And I again with like I love that kind of stuff that fills that in, and like some of the like the mystery of it too. I think we talked about that with the story in A Link to the Past, where there's still some like gray areas of like everything's not spelled out for you. It's a little mysterious, and I personally like that. I like it goes back to when I first became a Zelda fan, and there was people speculating in forums about timeline and what does this mean, and I think this game actually has plenty of that when you get into it, of like just these little details that you make up to kind of like fill in the gaps and stuff like that. So I like it. I love that kind of stuff.
Even like you were talking about the manual, there was also the Nintendo Power had the tips and tactics, like an expanded instruction manual. So it had like a guide for the first 5 dungeons, and then it had like just little maps for 6, 7, and 8, but not a full guide. And then 9, it was like a big question mark. And even the official artwork of Ganon, there is no official artwork of Ganon. It's literally a question mark, but in a font that's mysterious.
Wow.
So it's they give you some, but like you still gotta go adventure.
Oh sure, yeah.
I want to talk about like this is something that's I think changed a lot in the more recent Zelda games regarding like the pacing and progression, because I feel more modern games, in particular A Link Between Worlds, but then much more so Breath of the Wild. Like a lot of people think it's like, oh, it went back to the style of the original Legend of Zelda in regards to the progression. Like you're in this world, do what you want, and that's really what this game was. I felt.
Yeah.
And
just what I said earlier, they just drop you in. You don't even have a sword, and they don't teach you how to use a sword. You can read the manual. That's your tutorial.
Should they have like one of those like Orca tutorials with the old man?
Hit the old man 100 times without getting hit 3 times.
Down. Well, there's only one button to use your sword. That simplifies things. There ain't no spin attack in this.
Oh my god.
But I think it's one of the better paced games. I mean, we both gave it high regards. I gave it a 4.
I gave it a high 5. Because I do. I love it, actually. We already talked about it with the world. I basically said everything, but I love that, and how later in the game things unravel, like how you can get the step ladder to like cross the river to go to this like northwest part, or if you figure out how to get to the Lost Woods, you can get to that part and encounter dungeons out of order. You see all these reverse dungeon order and all this nonsense that people come up with. And I love it. So exactly what you said about like Breath of the Wild, to me, that is even a little bit more guided just because you have like the Great Plateau or whatever. But
The very intro is, yeah.
But it's like the same thing in spirit, you know. So
Right.
this thing that most people love about Breath of the Wild, I think, yeah, it totally comes from here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like moving on, we both gave like more middle of the road with the gameplay and the combat.
Yeah, I mean, I went pretty high. It's really grown on me, actually.
I feel there's a big learning curve to getting so that you're like a pretty good player at this game.
Yeah.
You could beat this game 10 times and not be good at it. Like,
I think I've said many times on camera even, like how frustrating like blue dark nuts or whatever, or dark nuts in general are, but like now, like, I find fighting them fun.
I do too. I have a lot of fun with them. You get an idea of like, because you see the squares, they only move on the squares. They don't move so you know when they're gonna turn. You know when you have a shot to hit them. There's a lot of strategy with fighting them.
Yeah, I think right away, like, a comparison you can make there, like a thing people think of as how like you can only move in 4 directions.
Yep.
But to me, it's like, that's fine, because that's how the game works, and that's how all the enemies work. So like, when I think about fighting a blue dark nut, it's like, okay, he can only move in 4 directions, I can only move in 4 directions. And I don't know, I don't feel like, because I think about fighting him, like you said, in terms of squares. So it's very simplistic, but to me, I've locked into that, and I find it, sometimes it's still really frustrating, because it can be hard if you mess something up and I'll unravel and I'll start to fall apart.
Right.
But,
especially in those rooms when there's wizrobes and bubbles and likes.
But yeah, I mean, once you lock into that, maybe some people maybe never will, but I've kind of locked into that gameplay, and so I raised it. I really like it. So
no, I think it's awesome. I love the combat. A few knocks because some of the gameplay regarding like the puzzles or kind of lack thereof.
Yeah.
There's 2 kinds of puzzles in this game, or I guess 3. The puzzles are, 1, you kill all the enemies and push a block. You know, okay. And then 2, the overworld, and even some of the dungeons, it's burn every bush or bomb every wall.
That's kind of what was holding World back for me a little bit. This category and later with side content.
Okay.
Because it's like some of the side content you'd never find.
Yeah.
But and yeah, like the pushing the block thing, I will say some of that information is in the manual, because like the game never tells you to push a block, but they do suggest you in that.
I would say that like puzzle elements were not part of this game. Like I'd go as far as saying that was just not a thing.
There's some rooms that really stick out to me. Like, you go into a room and it's a one-way door, and it's a room full of Gibdos, and you kill them all. The door, it's a one-way door. It doesn't open, but they drop a bomb.
Okay, level 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like actually a clever bomb puzzle. I actually, this last time I played through it was because it was for Gooey's Dungeon Dive. I was like really looking out for like stuff like the bomb puzzles, because I thought, oh, they're probably egregiously bad. It's like you just got a bomb everywhere. If you run out of bombs, it sucks. But like, they're actually usually kind of clever.
Yeah.
They're usually hinted at, and it goes back to what I was saying about like, it just like the manual encourages you to like actually pay attention.
Yeah, that's one of the few required bomb rooms as well.
Yes.
I think the first one. That's the first required bomb.
If you don't have to go in there though. I don't think so.
No, you got to go that way to get the whistle. Because you need it to fight Dig Dogger.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like if you're like paying attention to the map and like looking at stuff, like a lot of times you can be like narrow it down and be like, oh, I should actually try placing a bomb there. So
yeah.
That's maybe more of a Dungeons thing, but.
So the game, it introduced a lot of like some of the staples in the Zelda series when it comes to the items. You got your bombs and your bow.
The boomerang is awesome in this, I think. I like the boomerang.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I gave these actually really low marks on the items.
Yeah, 2.
I gave it a 2 because I don't like the items in this game.
Okay.
And it has this weird, like, this is we make fun of Twilight Princess for doing this, but it's like in level...
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Level 1, you get the boomerang.
Uh-huh.
And level 2, you get the magical boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, buddy, like, we can... where's the magic wand? Why is that buried in level 7 or something?
Yeah.
Like, give us that.
Or like, you buy the candle from the shop, and it's 1 use per screen, which is totally impractical since some of these screens where you have to like burn a random bush, you have to like try to burn it. Like you can't just easily explore that.
Yep.
But later you get like the red candle
in level 7.
and you can
Really late in the game. Yeah.
and then like the next dungeon I think it is, or one of them, you get the ability to like shoot fire from your wand to
you
upgrade
get
it.
the magic book in level 8.
So there's a lot of like fire shooting going on way later in the game.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to just burn everything right away. You know?
Yeah. Well, like, even the first dungeon, the main dungeon, you get the boomerang, but the main dungeon is the bow.
Yeah.
Which is not even usable until you buy the arrow, which you don't need for 6 level. Like,
yeah, for the there's some changes I would definitely make. I would make Goma the first boss.
Okay.
And you can just use the bow right away, no arrow. You know, just random stuff like that. But I like a lot of the items in a vacuum though. Like out of the context of the game. But I still couldn't go that high. Like I like the boomerang personally. I like the wand, I think is a cool item, especially when you upgrade it.
You know, but by the time you get the wand, you usually have the magical sword, which is so much more powerful. The only thing is...
But when you don't have sword beams, I like to use it.
But you don't get that until level 8, like really late in the game. And
what's that?
The sword beams. The magic wand with the fire, I guess.
No, but you can still use the wand in place of it. So it's
right, yeah.
I'll go into a room sometimes and just be hitting both buttons.
Okay. I virtually never use the wand.
Okay.
I don't remember the last time I've used it.
Well, you don't need it's not required. Yeah. So.
And then a lot of the other items you get are just like they're just means of getting over a barrier. You get a step ladder which has like 3 uses. Well, it has some uses in some of the dungeons with water, but you know, you get the raft, which has 2 uses in the world.
Yeah, well, it's cool though. I like the raft.
Yeah, and we talked about the boomerang. Like I like the boomerang, but I hate the magical boomerang because it goes too far. It's too out of control.
That's true.
I don't like these items actually. I like
the base boomerang. It's sick when you get it. If you feel like, I at least feel like way more powerful now.
In the overworld, you get the bait.
That's cool too.
So
that's a quest item. That's different.
Yeah,
it's different.
Yeah. So let's talk about the dungeons. So let's dive deep into Gooey's Dungeon Dive.
I just played them all, and I was pretty in depth with them on Gooey's Dungeon Dive.
Do you feel like I personally feel that most people who've played this game don't distinguish the dungeons too much.
Yeah.
Because they all have similar... They definitely all have different elements. Like there's like the Wizrope dungeon and there's the Goria dungeon and there, you know...
Like I was having a hard time recalling exactly which dungeon the bomb puzzle was in.
Yeah. I just associate that just with what the boss is. Or some people might associate with the color palette because that's the main thing. There's like the blue dungeon, the green dungeon.
There's too many green dungeons.
There's like a piss orange dungeon.
Piss dungeons, yeah.
And there's the white dungeons at the later portion of the game. But I feel that while there is definitely like distinction overall compared to the majority of the series, it's much like I said about Adventure of Link, where they're palette swaps with just slightly different enemies. And I think the first 8 dungeons really are... They're all different, but like they're not unique in the same sense that they are in future Zelda titles. That might be the limitations of the console, though.
I think I agree with you. I think with what they're working with, I think they do a pretty good job of making them as distinct as they can, while still being, and they're still fun to explore. And there are. Like I said, when I was playing it, there are just surprising little elements in each one, like unique little moments or puzzles that I think are kind of cool, you know? Like, back to like a bomb puzzle, I was thinking of like if you're just straight up exploring Death Mountain for the first time, you know, when you go in there and you start exploring around, you can go in like basically a circle and not get anywhere and be like, where do I go next? And then if you look at the map, there's like a room in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I should try bombing there. All right. There's every dungeon has something like small like that I think is kind of nifty, and you have all these like you have like the old men in there giving you kind of these fun hints and stuff like that.
Go to the next room. I think that's one of the hints.
Some of them aren't great, but some are fun.
That's actually a very useful hint.
And yeah, I just think we go back to what I was talking about with like the lore and like filling in the gaps. You know, there's one, the Wizrobe dungeon. It's just a ton of Wizrobes, and it sucks. It's hard.
It's a tough dungeon.
It's tough. But I like, you know, a small detail in that is the item is the magic wand that like lets you shoot out the same kind of beams they do.
Yeah.
So it does make you feel like, oh, I found.
You're one of them.
I found. It doesn't work on them actually.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So there's just a lot of little things I like that, and even some that have like some design elements that are you see in later dungeons that I feel like they actually like kind of planted the seed right there. Like in level 5, there's a spot where you can't progress until you get the dungeon item, which people kind of associate with the later games or like something that came around in like A Link to the Past or something, but it actually started there. Like,
right, yeah.
And it's a clever little trick. So, yeah.
I'll associate the dungeons, and I'm going to jump. We're going to talk about the enemies and the bosses.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. Yeah.
One of my favorite dungeons is Death Mountain in this game.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like a greatest hits dungeon a little bit, because it's a lot of the enemies you've encountered. But I love that they introduce some brand new enemies late in the game.
It's sick.
The two variants of the Landmolus. Petra is like would probably be the toughest boss if he was a regular boss, but he's just like a mini boss in the in the dungeon, and you fight him like 3 times.
Yeah.
So I love Death Mountain, and I love the enemies in this game. And you were talking about the sprites earlier. I love the distinctive look of them. I love the little Lionels hopping around.
Yeah.
And you know, I love this goes back to the artwork too. I love that they all had unique art. And a lot of these enemies, the majority of them, have become like iconic enemies that are in the entire series, and then especially some of the bosses, like Dodongo and Goma and Goliath, who have been in 3, 4, 5 Zelda games.
Right.
We still haven't seen an Aquamentus in another game.
Well, in Oracle.
Actually, we did. Yeah, we saw
seasons, but we need a 3D Aquamentus for sure.
We've seen like a 2.5D Goliath. We need.
Yeah, right.
I want a flying Goliath. Like.
Yeah, I'm totally with you with the like how they save some for later. I think that's really cool. I was a bit dismayed playing through for Gooey's Dungeon Dive because I was like, enemies is like one of the ways that you can at least give the dungeon some personality in like a way you wouldn't expect. You know, like there's the Wizrobe dungeons, or like, you know, there's one that's like a bunch of dark nuts or whatever. But I did kind of like once you get a little bit later in the game, like the last like couple dungeons, there's not like new enemies,
right?
You know? So
yeah,
like, so the gameplay does kind of just feel like.
You see the Wizrobes in Dungeon 6. Dungeon 7, I think there's nothing. The blue Goriyas are new.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, more Goriyas.
And Dungeon 8 is almost like a greatest hits dungeon too, because you fight Manhandla. There's a Goma in there. There's a.
But so is Death Mountain a little bit. You know? So I'm a little bit mixed, especially because like, again, like some of the bosses I think are some of my favorites. Like I think Goliath in this game, I would stack it up with later bosses. Like even you know, regardless of era or time, I think it's a great fight.
It's tough too, challenging.
But you do fight Goliath as a boss again, I believe.
You fight him He's in multiple dungeons.
I'm okay with the mini boss thing. I like when they take the bosses and make them a mini boss.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, when you get to the end of a dungeon, especially like level 7, you get to the end and it's Aquamentus again.
You're so overpowered, and he's the same.
He's the same.
Gleeok in level 8.
Gleeok that gave another head, I guess.
4 heads, yeah.
4 heads, but still wasn't much harder.
You usually have the magical sword, so he's
I don't even really, But the Aquamentus one is especially disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, I like to see them reuse, especially because, like, on repeat, their fights are already quick, but on repeat, it's even quicker because you're so much more powerful. But I would have liked to see, like, a new boss there instead,
Yeah.
Not an easier fight.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of went in the middle with this, because, I love them, but I wish there was a little bit more.
Okay. Let's talk about the side content and extras. And it's worth noting that this was the lowest that both the community or the staff gave, and one of the lowest that the community gave. The community did give the story a little lower, and I gave it a 2 because I think the base game is the side content sucks. I really
sucks.
I think it just sucks.
Why does it suck?
I think what is the side? I don't even know what it is. There's a few heart containers around, which that's okay. I'm okay with that. But there's no, like, what are the optional items in this game?
The swords.
Are those optional? Like,
yeah, you don't have to get them.
Yeah.
And both of them.
You get the power bracelet as a side item.
Yeah, that's whatever, I guess. But
and then it's going back to what I was saying about the caves, and they're just like the secrets are the side content. Like, oh, there's a potion shop here. Ooh, there's a door repair guy, old man here.
Okay.
There's a secret rupee locate. It's bad, but it does have something that's unique to this game. That's not in it. It was this entire second quest.
There's a whole with different mixed up dungeons and.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder, a lot more confusing. And there's some new variants of enemies, like the Stalfos that shoot their swords.
This is like Master Quest before before Master Quest.
Yeah, and they didn't need to include this in this game, but like it's fun. I don't love the second quest, but I love that it exists.
I mean, it's like trollishly hard.
Yep.
But that's kind of what it's there for. It's like, you really want a challenge now, Yeah. Like, I think the first game is reasonably completable and difficult, or the second game is just like. Just kind of trolls you a little bit, which is fine. We had fun playing through it.
Yeah.
So,
it's really hard without a guide. It's
definitely.
And some of the dungeons you don't know which ones are. There's one-way doors that are invisible, like
it is for people who've like mastered the first game, which you could probably never do.
It's still hard, the second quest. Like
definitely.
It's just confusing because it doesn't tell you anything,
So with side content. I said it was good because I was thinking more relative to the size of the game.
Okay.
Like, I was thinking, like, I think relative to how big the game is and what you get, like, I think there's an appropriate amount of heart containers.
Okay.
And those are fun, cool collectibles. Like, I don't think there needed to be like something of the equivalent of like gold skulltulas in this
oh my god
game. You know what I mean? Like, because it's a very very simplistic game and it has some simplistic collectible. I was thinking, and then you have those swords, which you really do need, of course. But I like that you have them. They require like heart pieces to get, heart containers to get, but also like. You get hints for them, and you get hints for them in the dungeons, which I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And I also think it's cool that you get like hints in dungeons on how to get to other dungeons and stuff like that. So I thought that's really neat. And then in addition to that, I do like it's something similar to what we talked about in A Link to the Past. I know the items could be better, but I do like the concept that some of them are optional.
Okay.
Like, I do like the wand.
A good portion of them are optional,
Yeah, most of them you don't have to get.
The wand, the book, the power bracelet, the boomerang.
Yeah. Like I was saying, in a vacuum, like, I like the wand. I think you could move around some of these items. But regardless, I like that it is, like, optional, and it can if you, depending on how you use it, give you an edge in like combat, but it's not like totally required to beat the dungeon or anything.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's not the best, and I also went really low because we were talking about earlier the concept of like burning bushes to find some of the stuff is impossible.
Yeah.
So
it's silly.
I think if that was better, if there was like a better hint, or maybe you could, if you could use it multiple times and you go to a screen and you see, okay, there's 4 bushes that stand out.
You know what this needs? It needs like
A ROM hack or something.
no, like in Ocarina of Time 3D, there's the Shard of Agony. You
Okay.
go to a screen and it
vibrates.
chimes.
Okay.
There's a secret on the screen, and then you know there's a secret, so then you can try to burn everything down.
This game actually, something, it's got like its flaws or whatever, but something inspiring about it. I'll never do this, but it makes me want to like figure out how to like mod games so I could make like my perfect version of this game.
Okay.
That wouldn't be like changing crazy stuff, but it would just be like, okay, Goma's the first boss, and you don't have to buy arrows, and so you get the arrows, and just
Okay.
little things like remix things, rework things.
The Legend of Zelda Goo Master Edition.
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna learn how to do this. Someone teach me how to use.
There's a program called Zelda Classic that lets you do just this.
I know that's been around. I'm gonna learn how to use this, and I'm just gonna make third quest,
Okay.
which is just how I think first quest should be.
Okay. Wow. All right. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the music and sound. And as usual, this was the highest for both the community and staff. I think music has almost persistently been the highest ranked category by everybody.
So I was gonna say, because I was like 4, and I was looking at all the other ones, I gave it a 4, and I was trying to kind of be like you, of like, where am I ranking it in comparison to other games or what? And then I was like, you know what? Forget about it. Like, this game, I didn't give it a 5, but I was like, it may as well be a 5.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I gave it a 4, but because like just the like Legend of Zelda theme on its own is like one of the most iconic pieces of video game music.
Right.
And so I just think of not just that one song, but like every song in this kind of is like a staple in the Zelda series.
There's just not much.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't say they're actually all staple. I mean, there's the
dungeon theme hasn't been reused much.
The title theme, I love it. Mm-hmm. And it's got the same vibe as the overworld theme a little bit.
That's intentional.
So the title, and that's like, so I guess 2 songs. Mm-hmm. The underworld theme, the dungeon theme is very rarely seen in later. It has made appearances. But,
yeah.
And then there's the game over / ending theme, because the ending theme starts with the game over theme.
Yeah.
But that's it.
That's
all,
is it. Yeah.
That's all the music in the game. So I think I love the title theme. It's awesome. The classic overworld, not my favorite of the overworlds, but it's really good. And the underworld sounds very menacing.
It's a sick song. Oh no, there's the Death Mountain theme too.
Oh, which is not very good, I think.
No. Well, no.
It's got more doom to it.
It's anxiety inducing a little bit, which I think is good.
Yeah. So I think it's okay. I gave it I made a lot of comparisons with Adventure of Link with this game. And I think Adventure of Link has a much better soundtrack. But I only gave that a 4 because I thought, it's only got like 7 songs. So this one's like,
I don't remember what I gave the soundtrack on that one, but I probably would agree with you, where like I think each song comparatively is better, and there's a little bit more, but I would say this soundtrack is more iconic. And I know it's like our personal preference we're giving, but I
would not say it's more iconic, actually. I think the Adventure of Link soundtrack is more iconic.
No way.
Yes.
No way.
I do. I think so. I really think so.
I would say the Legend of Zelda theme on its own.
Yeah, well, that's in the
It is not in the other game.
It's
Let us know in the comments which soundtrack is more iconic.
Well, there's one game is clearly more iconic, so I think that might in nature make the soundtrack more. But I don't know. You can't touch the palace theme and the Great Palace theme, the town theme, the cave theme.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's better. I think it's definitely a better sound.
Either way, I gave it a solid middle of the road 3
Uh-huh.
because I think it's not bad. It's definitely not bad by any regards. There are games in the Zelda series that are much better.
Yeah, it's got the
Soundtrack-wise.
same thing where it's a little repetitive sometimes.
So let's look at the final numbers here. So the community and staff basically have been on par. If you look at their rankings, the bottom 6 games are almost identical between the community and staff. So community, you guys and our team are more or less on the same page. I mean, like, looking at everything, Twilight Princess is the only oddball between the community and staff. Other than that, almost all the games are only off by very little. Which, but then for us, Legend of Zelda came in, both of us in our top 5.
In
actually.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
At least so far, yeah.
Right, and we have the exact same top 5 at this point, you and I. Now the order is a little different, but it's the same 5 games at this point.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is kind of remarkable. Fun fact. So your final score came tied with the Wind Waker.
Yes.
And I think your exact quote was, "Yeah, you better put that in front of the Wind Waker."
Yeah. I wanted that to be sure because I know I felt like I went a little bit high with the Wind Waker, but I felt good about that because it was fresh when I had played it. But like I knew going into this, like I like this game more than the Wind Waker. I was like, oh, I give it the same rating.
Okay, well that's our rule. You get a if there's a tie, user picks. So
yeah, I feel strongly about that too. Like I said, I do really love this game, and so it's held back a little bit by some of the scores we're giving and putting it through the machine and all that stuff. But when I do just think of it, I think of it as for me, a really fun like game to just sit down and play and relax to.
Right.
Almost. And I love thinking about that aesthetic and era. There's some nostalgia for an era that I didn't even live in, but I just love that whole vibe of like the world and the art style and the music, and you can see that in my personal life or my life outside of this, where I'm doing Gooey's Dungeon Dive, and part of my goal with that was going in chronological order, but also starting with the dungeons in the first game and kind of giving them a bit more of an analysis than they normally get.
Right.
Even though later dungeons are all trampling it so far. But also with like virtual theater, we're watching through the Zelda cartoon, and so I just love everything about that era and aesthetic. So to me, it's probably not going to shake out this way by the end of the series, but to me, like, I think it is, in terms of at least like iconic Zelda games, it's got to be in like the top 5 Zelda games.
Okay. Yeah.
It's on the Mount Rushmore.
If you would have asked me what's a better Zelda game, Majora's Mask or Legend of Zelda, I would have probably said Legend of Zelda. But you throw it through the machine, and and they're right next to each other, but there's a big number gap.
The machine, I love it.
Other games are gonna fit in between there, but like this is the only one on this list that I feel, like I think I like it better than like Link's Awakening and Majora's Mask, but the list doesn't show that.
That's a lot of a big point discrepancy to get there.
I love this game, I really do. I mean, I speed run it. I wrote a guide. Everything.
We should have just had a category that's like personal feelings.
Oh, for on the definitive ranking?
Yeah, and
like tilt.
Tilt, yeah, and you can just put any number you want.
Wow. 5-point scale. We give it a 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's going to do it for The Legend of Zelda, so let us know your thoughts. But more importantly, for the month of January, it's going to be a unique one. Mm-hmm. We're playing this game called Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Some spin-off game.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see what you think about the the dungeons.
Well, you can drive them.
And oh, good point. The world of this game and the enemy. Well, we're gonna be playing Age of Calamity. We've been playing it.
Yeah.
But we're gonna throw it through the machine and see what it spits out. But you guys can, of course, contribute as well. There is a link in the description to the community poll, so fill it out based on your experiences with Age of Calamity. And I know the categories don't exactly fit Age of Calamity, but it's always up to your interpretation of what you consider that category to be for that game. So yeah, go ahead, and we will see you next year.
Happy New Year.